Hi, my name is Garrett Thompson. Welcome to the Dorm Room Sport Podcast, episode 13. We're going to get right into it. The St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup. After 52 years, the St. Louis Blues finally win the Stanley Cup in Boston against the Bruins, where it was one of the first times, I think it was the first time that they made it to the Cup final, where Bobby Orr did the sore thing that is infamous and probably one of the greatest hockey moments of all time. The Blues, you know what? It was weird. No one really. I don't remember too many times where people touched on that. Like, it was the last. Like, you think about that would be one of the times I would think about, at least, when two teams have faced in the past in the final. But anyways, right into the game, Jordan Binnington absolutely stood on his head. The shots were 12-4 after the first period, and St. Louis was up 2-0 going into the intermission. Jordan Binnington stood on his head. He had an absolutely incredible game. He was my choice for the Conn Smythe. Ryan O'Reilly won it. I'm not upset about that at all. Ryan O'Reilly had an incredible final. He played probably some of the best hockey I think I've ever seen him play. Obviously, he won the Conn Smythe, so it was definitely some pretty damn good hockey. That game was incredible. He scored the opening goal. It was a tip in front. It was after, the Bruins had all kinds of pressure on Binnington. Binnington was stretching out. He robbed Nordstrom in the third period. I watched that save. I stood up. I was standing ovation. Just absolutely, I lost it. I don't know if I lost to how much. I didn't lose it much more than I would have after they scored. It was crazy. St. Louis must have been going nuts after that save. The bench was standing up. He was the star. He was the first star of the game. O'Reilly obviously completely deserved the Conn Smythe, but if I were to pick a first star of the game, it was Binnington by an absolute mile. That game was perfect. That was probably one of the most perfectly played hockey games I've ever watched. The St. Louis Blues were getting pucks deep. They were getting pucks to the net. That was the best, one of the best defensively sound games I've ever seen, period. It was an absolute treat to watch. St. Louis deserved to win the cup, bar none. But after how they played, it just added to it. They just absolutely played stellar. Alex Pietrangelo scored the second goal. His acceptance of the Stanley Cup was probably one of the best acceptances I've ever seen. Picks it up. He just absolutely sounded like anybody, like any person watching that game would. He swore. He was just absolutely pumped. He absolutely deserving to. That was probably some of the best. St. Louis probably had some of the best playoff beards I've seen as well. Properly good. Ryan O'Reilly was growing some pretty solid facial hair. Obviously, I would know plenty about facial hair. Anyways, to continue into the game, St. Louis playing incredibly well. It was 2-0 throughout the second period. I don't remember there being a goal in the second period. I could be wrong, because all I remember is the bulk of the goals being scored in the third. I'm right. There was no goals scored in the second. It was a chess match for that second period. It was there were a lot more shots obviously for Boston. St. Louis was playing the very wall, trap out the neutral zone. You watch the power plays that Boston had a couple of power plays. Obviously, they got some good shots off. But the one thing that St. Louis did throughout the entire playoffs, we're going to sum up most of the playoffs as well. One thing they did throughout the entire playoffs is they just absolutely closed out the neutral zone. Any highlights, they talked about it all the time on the broadcasts. They close out the neutral zone. They don't give a power play any chance at all to get in, because they're so sound and they're so formative and they're just so robotic in terms of just how they line up to not give the team a chance to get into the zone. And it's crazy to watch. The Leafs didn't do that in their playoff run. Obviously, they're not in it anymore. But how the Blues did that is just absolutely incredible, and it's one of the big contributing reasons why they won. Berube coached his socks off, honestly. They're last in the league in January. They throw Binnington into the net and be like, okay, kid, run with it. And he did. Jake Allen, deserving of the cup and played well when he needed to. But that was just an absolute stellar performance by Binnington throughout the entire season, the rest of the season. St. Louis really brought their socks up. They picked up the guys they needed to pick up. It wasn't, they all said in their interviews it wasn't looking good. They were like, oh, it's going to be a barn burner of a season. It's going to be an absolute dumpster fire. No, they turned it right around. Berube said in an interview when he had his Stanley Cup champion hat on, he said, "Look, I knew they were going to make he said he knew they were going to make the playoffs at Christmas time." Now, that was an interesting point because at Christmas time they had just started to pick up some wins, but he also said just how the team came together. There was just something. There's always something. It doesn't necessarily have to be a record, but just the mood in the room and just how everybody comes together as a team really builds up just how strong the team is going to be. Not your wins. Obviously, your wins obviously contribute to making the playoffs, but to go on a run like they did, it definitely wasn't realized or noticed, I think, by the record. I think it was noticed by the overall mood in the room and just how everybody came together as a team. It was incredible, and they went on a great run. They came into the playoffs. I don't think anybody saw them beating out the first round, let alone beating out Winnipeg, and they did it. They went into the second round, and they beat Dallas, and they went into the third round, and they beat San Jose, and it was just an absolutely dominant playoff run for St. Louis. They were just defensively dominant. To sum up Boston's playoff run, they beat Toronto in the first round. They absolutely ran through who was it? They ran through Columbus in the second round. It feels like so long ago that like the Leafs were in the playoffs. It was the first round. It feels so long ago, but it wasn't. Anyways, it was incredible. It's funny how far away that seems. But Boston beat Columbus. I thought Columbus was going to win that series. A lot of people thought Columbus was going to win that series. A lot of people thought Carolina was going to beat Boston in the Eastern Conference Final. But Boston came in and they got their brooms out and they beat them. And they come into the final and everybody had them pinned for the cup. Strictly because I think they've won it before. And there's a really weird point where in the interview, Marchand was like, oh, they took all of our dreams away. I was like, you've won a cup, first of all. And second of all, like he made it seem like he didn't win a cup, but obviously there was a lot of guys in that room who hadn't, and they were all crushed. And they were all really holding back tears. Like that was a really passionate team for sure. Look at I'm just talking like a hockey fan. I'm not talking like a Leafs fan. I know a lot of times I talk about the Bruins like a Leafs fan and how like I don't like Marchand and all that. Marchand's a good hockey player. I don't like how he acts sometimes, but he's a good hockey player, and that's why in some cases a lot of people hate him is because he's so good. Bergeron, he's a stand-up human being. Pasternak's really good. Zdeno Chara was probably one of the most beast. That was probably the most beast hockey moment I've ever seen. One of the most beast hockey moments I've ever seen when he came back from broken jaw. Looked at him, fixed him up a little bit. Okay, bud, throw a cage on. You're good to go. Like there's no play more hockey than that. There's been a lot of hockey plays playing on broken legs, holding the cup up on broken legs, on torn everything. Ryan O'Reilly broke a rib in the series against Dallas. That was the second round, and he still kept going. All of these guys at the end of series, people find out all these injuries they played through. It's crazy. In the AHL, one of the Chicago Wolves lacerated his kidney and kept playing. And then after the game, they're like, okay, go to the hospital. That's hockey. You toughen through stuff. Obviously, there's a point where like if it's too bad, obviously go to the hospital. Don't be stupid. But there's so much passion in this sport that people are just able to play through everything. And it's incredible to watch. You got to show respect no matter who you cheer for about just how passionate and how the want to win and the want to play the sport for your team. There's a lot of sports where at the end of a championship run, there's a lot of like, oh, I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm here. There's a lot of that in sports. I'm sure there's been that in hockey, of course, but a lot of the time it's I'm happy we. There's a lot of we. There's no I. There's no I in team. There's no I in team, but there is a me, blah, blah, blah. There's no I in team. There's a big we. It's always we in hockey. It's a team. Your team won the cup. Your team won the game. Your team lost the game. Very key. And I think that the Bruins they had a good series. They played really well. Tuukka Rask stood on his head. Ryan O'Reilly deserved the Conn Smythe, but Tuukka Rask was a very close runner-up. Absolutely he was. I think that the one thing that really bothered me was how they fixed the Vezina candidate. Wait until the end of the playoffs. Don't do that. Wait until the end of the playoffs. Really, like honestly, wait until the end of the playoffs before you pick it. Because there's a lot of playoff runs where goalies deserve it. I'm not saying throw Binnington into the mix. I mean, yeah, throw Binnington into the mix. And I think that Frederik Andersen could have been in it. I think Tuukka Rask could have been in it easily. Absolutely he could have been in it. But they picked Robin Leonard, Ben Bishop, and Andrei Vasilevsky. Andrei Vasilevsky got the broom given to him in the first round, right after he was nominated, and was one of the top 3. Not saying he wasn't deserving, he was, but it felt like they didn't even consider anybody else but the 3 guys that they think they would get the best fan reaction from. Because Vasilevsky had the 62-win season. Look, Ben Bishop deserved it for sure. Robin Leonard had a comeback year and he played really well. He did. He played really well. I think that there should have been a few more. I think there should have been just more nominations. These guys deserved it, sure, but there should have been. I think Rask could have been on that list. Frederik Andersen could have easily been on that list. He stood on his head when he really needed to, when the team wasn't performing, especially in March, when they just were an absolute dumpster fire and they just crawled into the playoffs. To sum up the Stanley Cup playoffs for sure that was probably the most whirlwind and unexpected bracket-breaking playoff experience I've ever had. That was the most bracket-breaking. Anybody can agree with me on that one. It was bracket-breaking. No one thought Tampa Bay would get swept. No one. Not even Columbus fans, I don't think. If there was a Columbus fan that had them sweeping Tampa Bay, it was a joke made by an 8-year-old Columbus Blue Jackets fan. All of the Blue Jackets, or it could have been all the Blue Jackets fans who were absolutely passionate, and it was an absolutely crazy experience to watch them, and how crazy that barn was, and how crazy those fans are, and how awesome and passionate and amazing they are. They gave their team a standing ovation. They weren't upset. They were just absolutely so pumped that they were there. It was great to watch, and they they're just such. It was such an unexpected run, and it was awesome to see. Obviously, it was heartbreaking when they lost, but it was just incredible to see, and I think they can do it again next year. They are going to have a lot of different pieces, but I think they could do it again. Absolutely. I don't know if they'll have Bobrovsky. I don't know if they'll have Panarin, but they've got some key guys, and it's weird because a lot of their guys on their team are up for trades. If they can sign one, maybe 2 of them, maybe sign Duchesne. Don't let Duchesne go anywhere. I would sign him. It's not off the table. It's not off the table for him to get traded, of course, but it's not off the table for him to get signed either. It's obvious that he's always in this trade spotlight, like especially recently. Like obviously after Ottawa, he was crazy into the trade spotlight, and like at the trade deadline, he got traded to Columbus, and he was in the spotlight. He was like, everybody was okay. Like this guy's where's he gonna go? There's a whole bunch of trades possibilities going on before the deadline. He got traded to Columbus, and he seemed like he fit in. He seemed like he fit in with that team. Why would you trade away a guy that fits in so quickly with your team? I really don't think they should trade him. If they do, he'll fit in anywhere. He's that kind of player that just like brings in the right kind of vibe. But I thought he really just fit in with them. I honestly did. I don't think he should get traded, but if he does, he does. That's hockey. That's just a part of the sport. That's just how that's just how the sport operates, and you move on. To sum up the playoffs and to sum up the final, that was just incredible. That was hockey. That was just an absolutely exciting playoff to watch. Talking about it was crazy. Seeing all the upsets and seeing how pumped fan bases were to see their teams do things for the first time, to see Carolina make it to the Eastern Conference Final for the first time since 2009. Like, that's crazy. I was 10. I was in grade 5 the last time Carolina went to the Eastern Conference Final. That's forever ago. I'm 20 now. That was forever ago. It feels like forever ago. Obviously, if there's people who are older watching that, they're like, oh, you're so young. That still feels like a while ago. That was a while ago. That was 10 years ago. It's incredible. Carolina, if they keep the right pieces together, they're going to go back again. They're going to go to the playoffs again easily. Easily. $6 million worth of season tickets were purchased, I think, or something like that, or tickets were purchased by the Carolina fan base for next year based on this playoff run. That's ridiculous. That's the highest they've seen, I think, or something like that. There's ballpark numbers in that kind of category. 6 million, millions of dollars is crazy. Just crazy. It's great to see. You want to see that. Carolina's a great fan base, and they were just in need of a bit of a push, and they got it. Now, finally, to summary, absolute summary of it. Awesome, incredible, proper Stanley Cup final. Happy to watch it. Happy to tell you guys about it. Now, to briefly talk about, because there's kind of an important game tonight, we are going to switch to basketball. Just quickly, I want to talk about Game 6 that's going on tonight, and I wanted to talk about a few things. I'm going to get right into it. Durant's injury. I think that I didn't talk about this in the last video, and I'm looking back at it. I'm shocked that I didn't, because I kind of got into it, into the game, and into just talking about it. I was more into the fact that, like, how we only lost by a point. Marc Gasol was fouled. Apparently, he should have gotten 2 shots. I don't remember seeing that play. Obviously, you can't do anything about it now, but apparently they missed a play and he should have gotten 2 shots, and we were down by 1, we would have won. You don't know that. Maybe we could have still lost the game if he had gotten the foul, but the foul would definitely have helped, because Marc Gasol was shooting really well from the free throw line last night. Game 6, not last night. Obviously. Now, to talk about the Kevin Durant injury, I just wanted to talk about the Kevin Durant injury briefly before the end of the video. This has been a lot to talk about, but it feels good. It feels good to actually have some content and not have to scramble to talk about topics with everybody. Just to talk about it though, Warriors fan, obviously it was not Canadian. It wasn't Canadian. It wasn't good sportsmen for the Raptors fans to be cheering Durant's injury. But it was so funny. Everyone's all upset about that. Of course, it was obviously not good. But when you really think about it, it didn't last for very long. They cheered his injury for what seemed like a minute. Obviously, they were Lowry was Lowry, Ibaka. Everybody was trying to calm everybody down and be like, look, what are you doing? Don't cheer a guy on. It's a terrible injury. He's out for the rest of the season. He's out for not the rest of the season, for 2 games. But you don't rush an injury like that, and it was terrible to see. They rushed him a lot. But they did that to Kawhi Leonard. The Warriors fans did the same thing. They didn't apologize for it. They didn't do everything. Canadian fans sent flowers. They're raising money right now, $20,000 for Durant's charity. That's how sorry everybody is. That's Canadian. That is the most Canadian thing. That's one of the most. That's Canadian. The Warriors fans wouldn't have done that for Leonard. Are you kidding me? No way. No way. That was a brief summary of it all. No way they would have done it. No way. But that was a brief summary of everything. Game 6 goes tonight in Oakland. Let's get it done. We the North. I will be watching that game. I will be screaming at my television. You can count on it. And that just about sums it up. Thank you guys very much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Like, subscribe. Thank you very much.